What is up, all you mother lovers? Welcome back to the channel. If you wouldn't mind, hit that like and hit that subscribe button. So today we're going to go through the oil change and fuel filter change on a 2022 Yamaha F250XB model. I'm going to run through the basics of getting that top engine cover off and just a rundown of the tools. You're going to need a 5mm hex or T-handle for getting that side cowling off. You're going to need a ratchet and extension, a 13mm socket for the oil plug, 10mm socket for the fuel filter bracket, an oil filter strap or a wrench, a flathead or a Phillips head screwdriver, and an optional you'll see later is a thread chaser. So you can see you're going to take this 5mm T-handle or hex, and I'm going to show you there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hex bolts, and I didn't show it, but to the right there is another one. So this is a template that I use, kind of use it from engine work back in the day. You mark your spots, draw a template of the actual cowling, and then as you remove the bolt, you can take the bolts and put them in the place so that you remember. Some of these bolts are longer than other bolts, so if you don't have a good memory, it's nice to have a little memory aid with you, so when you're replacing the cowling back onto the engine, you know exactly where they go. Sometimes they can be stubborn. Do not force them. Let me make that very clear. If they're hard to take out, don't force them. You're gonna see here on this rear cowling bolt that it takes a little effort to get it out. If they get a little stuck, you can work them back and forth, but if you're any type of force, do not, because they will break. I have broken them before. So here you see I'm having a little bit of a hard time with this one. I'm taking the T-handle and I'm just trying to get the bolt free, tightening and loosening, tightening and loosening. If you can get some anti-seize in there, I would try it, but it would be a little hard. So if you see here, again, I'm going to show you, I'm trying to just basically get it free and just rock the bolt, tighten and loosen and tighten and loosen. And eventually what I'm going to do is I get it a little bit free, and I'm going to do the same thing with my impact socket. So I go ahead, I try a little more, break out the impact socket, I run it in and out on the bolt to break it free, and eventually it comes free. So there we go, we finally got the bolt free, and we're going to put it in our template, save that for later, for when we're putting the cowling back on. On top, inside of the engine cover area, you're going to have these 2 screws or bolts, whatever you prefer to call them. You're going to remove those 2, and it's holding the top of the cowling into the top of the engine cover. Some people like to do this in a different method. They'll get an actual oil extractor and they will extract the oil from the engine through the dipstick tube. It comes with a long skinny tube that you can insert down into the dipstick, and it pressurizes the system and removes the oil. That method, I like to do it this way because it lets me get access to the side of the lower unit and everything underneath there so I can clean it up. So if you can see here, you just go ahead and remove that side cowling off the side, and it'll give you access to the oil drain plug. So you have the oil filter here, which will be replacing that, and your oil drain plug. If you can see, it has this little rubber device that aids in draining the oil. So I went ahead and I propped up a funnel underneath that with an oil spill pan propped up. With a 13mm here, I'm going to go ahead and remove that oil plug, and you'll see how easy it is to drain the oil into the oil spill pan. Now let it be a note, watch your oil, look at your oil come out, make sure it's not milky or have contaminants in it or anything like that. If it comes out milky or any other color than a normal used oil color of a dark brown, then you have some engine mechanical issues going on. So we're going to head and let that drain out. While we let that drain out, we're going to go ahead and replace this oil filter. They make an actual oil filter cap wrench that will slide over the top of this oil filter and remove it, but I have filter straps and I use that for removing the oil filters. Go ahead and remove that oil filter, discard that. If you want to, you can actually cut it open and inspect it for any contaminants that the engine may have picked up. But I did not see any while draining it, so I'm not going to go ahead and do any further inspections on that. Go ahead and clean up the surface areas, the mating surface areas for the oil filter. Any spills, get that cleaned up. Here's the oil filter here. It's an N266-13440-03 oil filter. Go ahead and lube up that ring on the oil filter and reinstall it back onto the engine. So now that you got the oil filter replaced, you're gonna go ahead and start filling it with oil. If you look on the side of the top engine cover, it has the quantities with and without a filter. So this is if you replace a filter or don't replace a filter. If you don't replace the filter, it technically should only need 6.3 quarts, and if you do replace the filter, it should need 6.7. Just inspect the oil fill cap, make sure there's no contamination, milky fluid on there. I'm gonna go with the Yamalube 10W30. I'm in a colder climate, and I'm gonna do a total of 7, but I'm gonna put 6 in, check the dipstick tube, and then probably use the final 7. So I'm going to go ahead and get that 6 quart in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull the dipstick and check the height of the oil on the dipstick to see where we're at. Pull the dipstick out. I see that we are at a little under halfway up the dipstick. You want it to be 3/4. You can't really see it in the video, but the line goes a little below half. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe that off, and I'm going to put the dipstick back in and add that 7 quart. And that 7 quart should get us to where we need to be. So we got that 7 quart we're putting in here. We're going to go ahead and check the dipstick again. It should be 3/4 of the way between the 2 holes. So you see 2 holes at the bottom and the top. It should be at least 3/4 of the way between those 2 holes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wipe down this seal. I always like to wipe down this seal after I have this engine cover off to get any salt or corrosion out of it. And then we're going to move over to the fuel filter. There's 2 10mm bolts. There's one on the top here, and there's one on the bottom on the right side. You might need a swivel socket to get to this one, so I broke out a 10mm swivel and removed that bolt as well. Once you get that bolt off, this whole fuel filter bracket we'll be able to pull off and remove and set to the side. Once you do that, you can finally get to the fuel filter housing, and you go ahead and twist that fuel filter housing. And when you get that fuel filter housing off, you should be able to do it by hand. Once you get it off, you'll remove the fuel filter housing, and then you'll take out the fuel filter. You're going to throw that fuel filter away, and you're going to grab your new fuel filter, a 6P3-WS24A-02 filter. Make sure you're getting the right filter. I can't stress that enough, that if you get the wrong fuel filter, it obviously isn't going to work. There's a couple different methods you can do this. You can put the filter into the top housing and then take the bottom housing and screw it up into place. Or you can take the filter, put it into the bottom cup housing itself, and then get your housing up into place and then screw it into place. This doesn't have to be crazy tight, hand tight, good enough, or we call it good and tight is a good method. Then you're going to take your housing, put your housing back on, top bolt, bottom bolt in reverse, and get that housing installed. Once you're done with that, that's it. That's all you need to do to replace your fuel filter. I like to do this just about every oil change. So I'm going to go ahead, again, I just like to wipe this seal just as an extra step in the process to make sure there's no salt or corrosion buildup. It makes for a better seal when you get the engine cover back on. Same thing with the lower unit. Any crusty salt or anything, I'm going to go ahead and wipe it away. Get that. So Yamaha makes this spray. It's an anti-corrosion spray. It's a silicone-based spray, I believe, protectant, lubricant. I like to spray this on the metal parts of the engine, basically like the cylinder head where I can see it, any open spaces where there's metal, give a nice little coating on it. Along the edges, all these brackets, steering brackets, and all these shift brackets and stuff. Just get a nice decent little coating on them on the fuel rails and stuff. Anywhere where there could be any water intrusion. I like to give a nice little coat on this lower unit up underneath on the underside and get a decent coating on it. So if you saw earlier, I had a hard time with getting one of the bolts out of the cowling, and I have this thread chaser kit. It's optional for you. I have a bolt style and a nut style so that you can chase the threads on the female end, you could call it, the inserts of the actual screws on the housing of the lower unit. So if you see here, I'm just kind of chasing them through. This one, like I said earlier, was a little difficult, and what this thing does is it actually cleans out and straightens out the threads if you have any threads that are kind of nicked up or damaged. And I'm just taking you can take a screw gun, a screwdriver, or a ratchet, and I'm just running this in and out of the orifices just to get them cleared. So I'm going ahead and I'm going to go through all of them. Some of them don't force it all the way through because this is not a through bolt. It just goes in about ½ an inch, maybe less. And I'm just going ahead all the way until where it just stops. And I'm running them back and forth just to clean those threads out. And you can see some of the crap that's falling out of those threads. Now for the bolts, I have the other portion of this kit that is used for cleaning the bolt threads. So I'm just basically taking that thread chaser and I'm running it back and forth on the threads of the bolts, and I'm getting them cleaned off. So once you're done going through all those threads and getting everything cleaned up, if you decide to do that, go ahead and reinstall that side cowl housing. If you look on the back here, there's actually a groove on the left side, and on the right side it has a single groove and they slide into one another, so you have to make sure that those grooves align. and you go ahead and reinstall your bolts into that side cowl. So I'm going to make sure everything at first is hand tight, and then I'm going to go back through and tighten all the bolts completely. You want to make sure that they're loosely installed at first so you can get everything lined up, and then you can go back through. Then you're going to go ahead and install these 2 top cowling bolts or screws, whatever you want to call them, and tighten those down. Once you get those tightened down, you are finished with installing the cowling back on the side of the engine. And that sums it up. So that's it for an oil change and filter change, fuel filter change on a 2022 Yamaha F250XB. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We'll catch you later.